Guy Fawkes bottom!
I am the Undertaker. Only joking, it's Johnbonne here. I hope you're all having a pleasant time. I'm dressed as the Undertaker for Hallololoween. As tradition dictates, the real Undertaker is doing some kinky shit with some goth girls. And, well, as tradition dictates for me, I'm doing a Hallololoween review. Reviewing a horror game for October the 31st. Because that beats getting laid. Yeah. It should really come as no surprise that I'm reviewing SOMA for the obligatory Hallololoween video. It was either that or Alien Isolation, or as I prefer to call it, Crouch or Die Simulator, because apparently we're still shitting our pants and clapping our hands at how funny simulators are. And like one of those more popular and attractive YouTubers, I'm doing the game that's title is small enough to fit in the title and is in all caps to grab more viewers. Only this review won't be brimming with rehearsed screaming and a face cam in the corner of a bloke you either want to punch or shag. Maybe both. You may be wondering where this bitterness and competent writing came from as opposed to a stream of swear words and mishmash of bottom footage, and I say it's early yet.
Welcome to the Shagathon!
It's not because I'm jealous of YouTubers that are ridiculously more popular than this lump of lard and Hawaiian shirt that people think makes me look gay. Well, not just that anyway, but because wailing until you're blue in the face or until you've made bank on the ad revenue is a disservice to what SOMA really is. Sure, it's got its khaki-dud scary moments and has no shortage of comparisons to Frictional Games' other hit, Amnesia, but one should be gasping in awe rather than yelling in fright, although screaming makes more dough. Players take control of Simon Jarrett, a victim of a car crash that leaves him with devastating brain damage. He's given the life-changing chance to heal this through a series of scans and medications, but it's all experimental. Not realising strapping yourself in a chair and having your vision obscured in a horror game always leads to badness, Simon agrees to the experiment oblivious to the certain doom we're all aware of. He wakes up in a space station. Or at least you think it's a space station until you realise you're underwater, which if you'd just given me a minute I would have explained for fuck's sake. Somehow, someway, Jarrett now lives in the year 2102, 100 years after 2002 for anyone counting at home, and it seems most of humanity is gone except for the machines thinking they're human. It's almost like I have no mouth and I'm a scream, only without Benny's enormous cock and the Nazis. I'll let you decide if that's a good or bad thing. Simon now has to find out what in
Speedy Gonzales
name is going on with the machines going mental and facilities not functioning. To do this, our time-travelling pal needs to go through a variety of puzzles and sneaky moments, as one would expect from Frictional, because anything that dares to be different than on the Dark Descent will be looked upon like some kind of turd. This isn't bad though, considering the devs have learnt a lot since their time with Amnesia. True, the requests where just getting the thing and using it on a what's-it take place, but they are superbly implemented when the threat of a monster lurking in the darkness is a very real threat indeed.
Not terribly scary, is it, Eddie?
Besides, the computer puzzles are simple enough to understand without taking too much of your time in spite of their uniqueness to one another, occasionally requiring you to get user information, passwords and external storage from elsewhere. What I noticed was that the puzzles never take you too far away from the main objective, as in you're not constantly trailing about and tangenting like a Johnbonne Reviews video. There's a distinct lack of inventory puzzles, something that I for one really liked about older adventure games, as I felt more satisfied when I'd figured something out. You will sometimes be carrying an item and making it do a nice sound on another thing, but you'll almost always be lugging around your Omni tool. This really is just a big key that sees a tiny bit of use and carries AI companions to help troubleshoot and navigate the systems. Despite how the game makes a big song and dance about how revolutionary the bloody thing is, the Omni tool is just a radio and a key card. God, you'd think we're back in the good old days of Bioshock 1, wouldn't you? Only without the guns and electrocuting drug addicts for a laugh. Speaking of electrocution, there's a part where you pick up a stun gun but only use it once, which could have helped with the segments with the monster. I can't recall a time when I played a game with monsters so repulsive, so grotesque, so malformed and crooked and unnatural, and yet so marvellous and tantalising and arresting, and whatever other sodding words come up in Google when I look for synonyms for the term gorgeous. And if I could pronounce pulchritic wickedness. Oh, whatever. I'd describe them as that too. The insane creatures that stalk Pathos 2 are the collective malfunctions and destructive psyche that leeches off the human scans in their machine form. Or so I think. The game makes an effort to overcomplicate its events and their reasons for happening. Ignorance is bliss, and I'd prefer these monsters to have no explanation at all over the developers' rampant scribblings they call valid reasons for their being. Maybe these wretched things are the embodiment of my understanding of the writing. It's all terrifying stuff. Until it isn't. And it isn't after you've seen each of the monsters 1 or 2 times, because you can't be arsed with losing progress and when I play another game to review. The first monster gave me such a piss-poor impression given how easily avoided it is, and how it's simply not at all scary.
It's not terribly scary, is it, Eddie?
That's enough of that. That's enough.
Nigel Mansell.
That's not.
Nigel Mansell's World Championship game from Nintendo.
That's.
This might just be me though. Humanoid enemies creep me out far more than this scrambled mess of wire and tin. Not to mention I've had these strange visions of the 43rd millennium where such things are commonplace. But never mind about all that. The others though. The bloated, stumbling remnants of a human figure are the most nerve-wracking. And they can run like Billy-O when they find you, and can somehow open the doors without use of their hands. Well, they don't actually have hands, so yeah. Whenever these festering mutants are near, your flashlight flickers and your screen tears up like the worst case of V-Sync, and the more irritating it becomes, the more likely you'll be detected. Or throw your screen out the window because it's horrible to watch. At least it's not as bad as the tinnitus-inducing wine amnesia blared when he went insane. Drove me up the bloody wall, that did. None of this is to say encounters are bad, but they're predictable to anyone who's experienced amnesia. You know exactly when a monster encounter is coming around just by looking at a room's layout or puzzle requirements. Labyrinths and fetch quests always guarantee a visit from some nerd-glitch spawn, although those moments when you least expect it are the best. At least they would be if the hit detection wasn't as terrible as it is, due to it ruining so many meetings with the mutants. For some strange, unjustifiable reason, the undead offspring of Usain Bolt can bite your ass off 5 feet away, and half of these athletic, necrotic beasts don't even have teeth. Not that death is much of a penalty. When you die, you can spawn where you pegged it, or somewhere near, and the monster keeps going on his beat. You can only do this once or twice before you get a game over screen, and you need to restart from a checkpoint, or just give up in frustration because the monster's spawning didn't glitch out and you're free to roam in peace. Bollocks! To be honest, I wouldn't even bother running, which is all you can do, really. Why do you want to live in a world full of radio rental cyborgs, most of which want you dead anyway? Well, I suppose the visuals and sound design are reason enough. SOMA's visuals are spot on at taking you out of your comfort zone in a variety of ways, just when you become enchanted by the deep-sea industrial facilities, all of which you can enter and explore to learn about the terrors that took place. The game reminds you how bad things are gonna get, in an instant. It's disheartening to have to run past the beauty of set pieces that absorb you into them, knowing that it's only a slight reprieve from another upcoming death. Again, it's not all bad though. The entire game oozes style and scares that Bioshock promised in its first act and ultimately fails to deliver after a few hours. In a nutshell, that's what it is, only without the 60s aesthetic. The game also does wonders with the tiniest animations, making the slightest interactions, such as flipping squishes and sliding boxes, ever so satisfying. It's almost fetishistic, really, but with me, what isn't? But my absolute favourite thing is the biomechanical growths that sap the underwater wasteland of whatever life and substance there is. The infestation bleeds like weeping sores, infecting anyone unfortunate enough to be near its carnivorous boils. If it weren't so abhorrent, I could probably wank to this hideous, macabre nightmare. The sound design is spot on, and I really must give credit to the sound effects. Ambient noises and interaction with the various bits of tat add so much to the loneliness of Pathos 2, at least until the monster waddles in and ruins the moment. Funny how Undertaker says the same thing about me when he's got his funky post-sex music on, but never mind about all that. Point is, the audio's pretty good and the voice acting is way better than any of Frictional's other stuff.
Was that the ship?
Looks like your sabotage worked better than expected. Brace for impact! Hold on, the blast just pushed us off the plateau!
What does that mean?
If I don't hit Delta, we're dead.
Before we go trick-or-treating, I think it's time to give this game a beating, with my final thoughts. I enjoyed most of my time with SOMA, especially when I was just looking around, licking my nipples at the sight of the virus presence and throwing plastic bottles at the wall. When it's not being a not sequel to Amnesia, SOMA allows you to be engulfed in its heartfelt level design and overwhelmed by its crisp audio. But when it wants you to go into toddler mode and have you crawling around, babbling when the monster's near and sucking on your thumb facing the naughty corner, it's not as riveting. Thankfully, this is an Alien Isolation where any risk of enjoying the game, and heavens forbid standing up and walking like a grown-up, is punishable by death, and a continuous 18-hour slog at that. These moments with the creature only become more and more common at the halfway point, so you'll have a great time before you get there and encounters become tiring. What's a big problem from the start is the lack of showing over telling. A lot of what you learn comes from Catherine Chun, rather than Simon reading up on this info and providing the player with his own ideas as to what's going on. He might as well, considering the fact he's not a silent protagonist, and there's a great deal of stuff to take in. I can't be too harsh when there's loads of lore bits and every character encounter is remarkable. To conclude, SOMA isn't really my cup of tea despite preferring the clunkier Amnesia The Dark Descent. Everything is well made and there's no small amount of effort put into the slightest details, but I'm not overly impressed. And it's not as though I'm burnt out on horror games. I only play one a year because it's a thing people do for Hallololoween. It could quite simply be that it's more of the same and trying to act way too hard to act otherwise, with each chapter reinforcing that belief. Or it could be my untrained eye. Either way, I'd recommend the game I've mentioned enough times already over SOMA, but this is defo a worthwhile alternative to Alien Isolation. Then again, so is bird flu.
Until the next time, I'm Johnbonne, your #1 source for #2 games, wishing you all a happy Hallololoween. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's time for me to stalk the grave. I really am that desperate.